A 400-pound gorilla sat in the corner of her enclosure, tears streaming down her face. The researchers watching her had no idea what to do, because Koko wasn't just crying, she was signing, and what her hands were saying broke every single person in that room. To understand why that moment shattered everything scientists believed about the animal mind, you have to go back to the beginning, back to a sickly little baby gorilla born on the 4th of July, 1971, at the San Francisco Zoo. She arrived on Independence Day, which felt almost poetic in hindsight, because this particular gorilla would spend her entire life breaking boundaries between wild and human, between instinct and emotion, between them and us. The zoo staff called her Hanabiko, Japanese for fireworks baby. They shortened it to Koko. And from her very first days, Koko refused to be ordinary. As an infant, Koko fell seriously ill, the kind of illness that, in the wild, would have been a death sentence. But human hands reached in and pulled her back. She was separated from her mother and raised by zoo staff who fed her, held her, and kept her alive. By the time she recovered, something quietly remarkable had already taken root. Koko had bonded to humans in a way most gorillas never do. She watched their faces, she studied their gestures, she noticed things. That's when a young researcher named Dr. Francine Patterson stepped into her life. And nothing was ever the same again. Patterson had a bold, almost controversial idea. Most scientists at the time believed language was the exclusive property of human beings. The brain, the culture, the biology. These were the ingredients that made language possible, and animals simply didn't have the recipe. They could learn tricks, they could respond to commands, but meaning, the rich interior world of meaning that belonged only to us. Patterson disagreed, and she was going to use Koko to prove it. She began teaching Koko American Sign Language when the gorilla was just 1 year old. It started simply: a sign for food, a sign for drink, a sign for more. Most researchers expected progress to stall right there, at the level of trained responses, of a clever animal pushing buttons for treats. But Koko kept going. Month after month, year after year, the vocabulary grew. 10 signs became 50, 50 became 200, 200 became 600, used daily, with over 1,000 understood. Patterson published her findings, and the scientific world pushed back hard. Linguist Noam Chomsky was skeptical. Cognitive scientist Steven Pinker argued that Koko wasn't understanding signs at all. She was simply imitating hand movements to earn rewards. She was, they suggested, the world's most elaborate party trick. The criticism was fierce, and for a while, it was genuinely difficult to prove them wrong. Because how do you prove that an animal understands something, truly understands it, rather than simply reacting to it? The answer wasn't going to come from a laboratory test. It was going to come from a kitten. Koko was in her early teens when Patterson sat down with her and opened a picture book. It was a simple children's story, the kind you'd find in any library. And somewhere in its pages, there was a small illustrated cat. Koko sat quietly, turning the pages with her enormous hands, her dark eyes moving carefully across each image. And then she stopped. She looked at the cat. She looked at Patterson. And then, slowly and deliberately, she raised her hands and signed, "Cat." Patterson smiled and moved on, but Koko didn't. She kept returning to it, signing "cat" in the middle of meals, during play, out of nowhere. Patterson began to understand that this wasn't casual curiosity. This was a request. She brought Koko a stuffed toy cat, soft, realistic, convincing. Koko picked it up, turned it over in her hands, set it down, then looked at Patterson and signed 2 words that landed like a quiet verdict: "Real cat." Patterson hesitated. A gorilla, even the gentlest one on Earth, was still a creature of extraordinary physical power. A single moment of rough play could be fatal for a kitten. The idea felt irresponsible, maybe even reckless, but Koko kept asking. Day after day, with a patience and a consistency that felt less like animal behavior and more like someone waiting. Someone who knew exactly what they wanted and trusted that eventually someone would listen. So Patterson listened. They brought in a litter of kittens. Koko went completely still. She looked at each one with a focused, careful attention. The kind of attention you give something that matters to you. And then she reached out with a gentleness that made every person in that room hold their breath, and lifted a small gray kitten into her arms. She named him All Ball. What followed was not what science had predicted. Koko didn't treat All Ball the way an animal treats something new and interesting. She mothered him. She cradled him against her chest. She licked him clean. She sat perfectly, patiently still while he slept curled in her fur, afraid to move in case she disturbed him. When he batted at her face with his tiny paws, she laughed, a real, breathy, unmistakable gorilla laugh. Researchers who had spent entire careers studying primate behavior stood at the edges of that enclosure with their notebooks open and wrote nothing, because what they were watching wasn't data. It was tenderness, it was love. Koko had always been drawn to babies. She would watch human infants with a quiet intensity that Patterson found striking, a kind of longing that was hard to name and harder to dismiss. It was known that Koko, for physiological reasons, would never carry a baby gorilla of her own. And so it seemed she had made a decision in the way that Koko always made decisions, quietly, stubbornly, and with complete certainty. She had found another way to be a mother. She had found All Ball. Then came the day that changed everything. All Ball got out. It happened the way accidents always do. In a gap, in a moment, in the brief space of an unlocked door. The kitten slipped beyond the safety of Koko's world, and on an ordinary road, All Ball was struck by a car. He died. When Patterson told Koko, she watched something move across the gorilla's face that 20 years of research had never prepared her for. Koko went quiet. Her eyes changed, and then, slowly, her hands began to move. Cry, sad, trouble. She turned away. She didn't want to sign anymore. She didn't want to talk. And then, rising up from somewhere deep inside her, came a sound, low and hollow and unmistakably broken, that the researchers later struggled to describe. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't a growl. It was grief. Pure, unperformed, undeniable grief. The skeptics had said Koko was imitating, that everything she did was a performance for reward. But there was no reward here. There was no one to impress, no treat waiting at the end of this moment. There was only a gorilla, alone in her sorrow, mourning the small creature she had loved. Patterson asked her softly whether she understood what death meant. Koko's hands moved one more time. Sleep, goodbye. Hole, a cozy hole, she said. That's where animals go when they die, to a cozy hole. The notebooks stayed closed for a long time after that. Months passed. Koko's sadness didn't lift quickly. Real grief never does. But as her 44th birthday approached, Patterson made a quiet decision. She gathered a small group of kittens and brought them to Koko. The gorilla, who had been so still, so withdrawn, looked up. Among the kittens was one small gray cat, bold and bright-eyed, who walked straight toward this enormous fur-covered creature with the fearless confidence that only the very young possess. And Koko, who had cried for months, who had signed sad and trouble and goodbye, reached out her hand. The kitten walked right into it. Koko lifted her eyes to Patterson. Her hands moved softly. Baby. She chose 2 kittens that day and named them herself, Lips and Smokey. And within hours, she was back, cradling them, laughing her quiet gorilla laugh when they climbed her arms, watching them sleep against her chest with those careful, devoted, dark eyes. At one point, she signed to the researchers that she wanted to place a kitten on top of her head. They let her, and there she sat, this 400-pound gorilla, with a tiny kitten perched on her like the most impossible crown in the world. Her body relaxed, her eyes soft, her hands finally still. She wasn't signing anything. She didn't need to. Koko passed away on June 19, 2018, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 46. By the end of her life, she had mastered over 1,000 signs. She appeared on the cover of National Geographic twice. She learned to play the recorder. She made the scientific world reconsider everything it thought it understood about the inner lives of animals. But the thing people remember, the thing that stays with you long after the documentaries end and the research papers are filed away, isn't any of that. It's a gorilla holding a kitten, crying when it died, and then, months later, laughing again. Because love, even for a 400-pound gorilla born on the 4th of July, always finds its way back. The Gorilla Foundation said it best in their farewell statement. She taught us that we are more alike than we are different. And somewhere right now in a cozy hole, warm and quiet and safe, a small gray kitten named All Ball is waiting. And knowing Koko, she already has him curled right up in her arms. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. Subscribe so you never miss another story like this one, and we'll see you in the next video.